Thank you, Madam Chair. The good news here is there are a lot of areas where there is universal agreement. We agree that universal broadband is as necessary today as universal electrification was in the beginning in the 30s, and universal service for the old landline telephone was. Broadband has basically replaced our landline telephones, but it also ensures that we can have the most up-to-date and highest technology in a wide variety of places. We agree that every community should have access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet services that can adapt to ever-increasing demand, and that we don't want our rural and low-income communities to get the short end of the stick for reliability and affordability. But building a broadband network is complicated. It's more complicated, I would argue, than building highways and bridges and roads because the broadband network can become obsolete that much more quickly. So let's talk about the reason for the BEAD delays. We hear from our Republican colleagues that they're worried about waste, and we agree. And so we wanted to make sure that federal funding through the BEAD program was used to build out unserved areas. I've heard that a couple of times. It's not permitting delays that have caused the delay up to now because you don't get a permit until you know where you're putting your equipment, and you don't know where you're putting your equipment until you know who's unserved. So that was why the act said FCC build a map that will be the starting point for how money is allocated to who and where. But the FCC doesn't know who's served, they don't know where the networks are, and they don't know what's in the pipeline to be built. So they needed to get that information from the broadband providers. That's a complicated process I don't have time to go into, but let's just say that took a long time. It took a year. Then, because we want to make sure we're not going to overbuild and waste money, there was a challenge process led by the states. That took 6 months. Because as we did with the telecommunications infrastructure, we left to the states the primary responsibility of figuring out how to allocate this money. That's appropriate. States were all over the map. Some states like Virginia had broadband offices, had programs that were already giving out grants to build networks. Other states had to start from scratch. States are public entities, and when they take public actions, they have to follow open record laws, open meeting laws, so that they can get input from the public, so that the public can be sure what the requirements are going to be in whatever plan they ultimately adopt. That takes time, public notice, et cetera. That was a 6-month process just to do the challenge process, but at the same time, before they could get to the challenge process, they've got to build up the broadband capacity, bring the stakeholders together, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what has happened in the first year and a half. Once you get the map, then you build your plan. Once you know who needs the broadband, then you build the plan for how to get it there. That's what's been happening in the rest of the time. Not permitting because there's nothing to get a permit for yet. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about should this be technology neutral. The Act says that whatever federal dollars are spent on needs to be scalable and reliable. Scalable means it needs to meet demand. What we're talking about are the upload speeds and download speeds of everything from healthcare infrastructure or information to the infrastructure for a manufacturing plant to my son playing video games on his phone, all happening at the same time. So you need to make sure you have a network that's reliable and sustainable no matter what the weather. Fiber, in most cases, meets that need more than in other cases. And so what the Act does is say, whatever the technology is, we want you to choose the one that's the most reliable. That may be one thing today, but build a plan that's future-proof. So we can build a network that's future-proof so that when we spend federal money, we don't waste it on something that is obsolete tomorrow. Now, I don't have a question. I just wanted to make sure that we all understand the starting point of what we are and are not talking about when we decide what changes need to be made to be and what the long-term implications will be. And I yield back.